In this video, I'll show you how to create confidence interval estimates for a mean using Excel. So here I have one of the data sets open. This is for new product marketing. And we can see we have a number of variables here to choose from. If you don't remember what the variables mean for your data set, make sure to click on the Data Dictionary tab at the bottom. This will tell you all of the variables and a brief description about each one. And sometimes there's like a code of like what a 1 or a 0 might mean. So you want to make sure you understand that. If at any time there is a like a variable that you don't understand the answer options, please ask me because there are some nuances. So like, for instance, under education, there are a couple different categories of education. If you're not sure what something means, just ask. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just take a look at our data set here. And I want to create a confidence interval estimate, which we learned about in Chapter 8 using our data. Again, this is sample data, and I'm going to use this sample data to create an estimate that I can infer about the broader population of customers. Now, when we are creating confidence interval estimates of a mean, we can only find means or averages of ratio values or ratio data, meaning it has a true 0 and we can measure it. So for instance, let me just do, I'm curious, maybe the amount spent on wine in the last 2 years. So I'm going to look for this column right here. So I guess that means the dollar amount that these customers spend on wine. And so what we'll do is we'll go to the data tab up at the top. And on the far right, we're going to click on data analysis. So recall previously, you should have activated your data analysis ToolPak in Excel. If you haven't, there are instructions in the discussion board on how to turn it back on. But here you can see the data analysis menu has popped up. And we're going to go ahead and click on descriptive statistics. Although don't let that fool you. We are doing inferential statistics with confidence interval estimates, but it starts out descriptive, and I'll show you what I mean. So click on descriptive statistics, click OK, and then this menu pops up that asks for information to run some analyses. So the first thing we're going to do is look for the input range. This is essentially the data we want Excel to analyze. So I'll click on the little arrow so that it pops out and lets me choose the variable I want. Again, I want to know the amount of money spent on wine. So I'm just going to click on the J at the top, and what that does is that highlights the entire column of data. Then I'll click on the arrow here to bring me back to the menu, and then make sure to check labels in first row, because you noticed in the first row of my data set, these are labels. These are the names of the variables, right? This is not a number. This is the label amount of wines. If you don't check that, Excel will get annoyed at you because it's saying, why are you trying to make me calculate a word? I can only calculate numbers. So please make sure to check that box. If you don't, you'll get like a weird sound. The next box you need to check is summary statistics. You're asking it to create a table summarizing all the related statistical pieces of information about this variable I've chosen. And then one more box to check is to click on the confidence level for mean. So recall in Chapter 8, we're creating confidence interval estimates, in this case specifically the mean. So you need to check that so that it will run it for you. This is the inferential statistics part that they're going to include in our descriptive statistics table. And I'm going to use 95% because that's the most commonly used confidence level. Recall in Chapter 8, we learned it could be anywhere from like 80%, 90%, 99%. You can get really specific, like 92. But generally 95 is the most common, so I'll just use that. And then I'll go ahead and click OK. And then what happens is Excel starts to analyze all the data and will generate a new tab, Sheet 1. Let me go ahead and zoom in. And it's going to tell me all kinds of information, but it's a little squished. So what I want to do is, you can click on the line between the columns A and B and drag it out so you can see, what's the text in there. You could highlight the columns carefully and then double click on the line, and it will just widen it as much as it needs to. So just make sure you make it big enough. Then the next thing is we want to format this a little bit. I know amount of wines has to do with money. So what I would recommend, the easiest thing to do is just highlight everything and then click on that comma button on the home tab. So home, where the numbers are, do the comma, and then it's nicely cleaned up and rounded for you. And it doesn't really matter if it's like truly unit measures of money or something else. It's already just like in accounting format. So I would just leave it like that. If you know you're working with money, you can format specific things like there's my mean, that's my average, dollars spent on wine. And then right here at the bottom, that's my confidence level at 95%, which really what this is, and it's also in money, that is my margin of error. So I'm just labeling these real quick so it makes it easier for us to process. But what we need to do, once you've found your sample mean and you've found your margin of error, is we're going to identify the lower and upper confidence interval estimate limits, right? So we're going to find the lower limit and the upper limit. I'm just labeling it so it's easier to see. Pick a box, type equals, and recall in our formula, that's where we take our point estimate. In this case, it's a mean. We're going to take our mean minus our margin of error so that we get the lower limit of our confidence interval estimate. And then we'll do the same thing again, but now we're doing the upper limit. So we'll do equals the mean plus my margin of error, and we get this number here. So we can say this is the confidence interval estimate of how much people spend on wine over 2 years, right? So these are the calculations we're using for this week's discussion board. Notice there's a bunch of other statistical pieces of information in here, and it is really helpful to keep in mind that next week when we get into hypothesis testing, if you decide to do a hypothesis test on this variable, you will need these other pieces of information. So make sure to save this file somewhere. You can upload this directly into the discussion board so you have it saved. But once you've calculated your confidence interval estimate for a particular variable, so going to the discussion board, in addition to sharing your confidence interval tables, you can like copy paste it or you can just attach the Excel file. You also need to explain it in words. And I give templated language here and you just have to fill in the blank. So here's how I would explain mine. The sample mean for the amount of money spent on wine over 2 years is $303.94. And the margin of error is $13.95. Therefore, with a 95% confidence, we can conclude that the population mean for the amount of money spent on wine over 2 years is between $289.99 and $317.88. And then I put in parentheses, this is the confidence interval estimate of a mean so that we all know what this is. And then note that I say the sample size is, if you look at your table, the sample size is the count. So my sample size is 2,240 observations. This is important because we want to make sure that you have a good enough sample size with your data. And I do. 2,000 plus lines is a lot of observations. So you will write out that sentence with your specific information from the data analysis ToolPak output and whatever variable that you're working on. And then you also need to explain why this information is useful to your business. So let's say if my business was like a wine club, then this information would give me an idea on how much people are willing to spend on wine. And then that will help me make decisions about pricing the wine club, for instance. If you need help brainstorming this second piece, I highly encourage you to talk to your peers, but you can always email me too. Send me your data and say like, I'm not sure what this means, and I'm happy to walk you through it. If you have any questions, just let me know.